The view of Earth from space had changed. 7 years of war had left their mark. The orbital defense platforms circled the planet like a metal necklace. The moon base, once a small research station, now sprawled across the gray surface with military installations. Ships moved between Earth and Mars, carrying supplies and soldiers coming home. Captain Ta Jin stood on the observation deck of Victory Station. His tall frame was still in his black uniform. His dark eyes watched the Earth turn below. 3 months since the Krell surrender, and he still couldn't believe it. Humanity had won. "Captain, they're ready for you," said a voice behind him. Ta Jin turned to see Lieutenant Su Mai. Her uniform was perfect as always. Her short black hair framed a face that rarely showed emotion. But today, there was a small smile. "Thank you, Lieutenant," he said. "Is everyone there?" "Yes, sir. Commander Han Sung arrived 10 minutes ago." Ta Jin nodded and followed her through the station's bright corridors. Crew members stopped and saluted as they passed. The hero of Proxima, they called him. The man who led the final assault against the Krell mothership. He hated the name. "You're frowning again, sir," said Su Mai without looking back. "Just thinking about the meeting," he lied. The conference room was large with a round table in the center. A window looked out at Earth. 5 people sat around the table. Commander Han Sung, a short man with gray hair and sharp eyes. Dr. Hyun Woo, thin and nervous, his fingers tapping on a datapad. General Park, head of Earth Defense. Admiral Lee from Fleet Command. And a woman Ta Jin didn't know. "Captain Ta Jin," said General Park, standing. "Thank you for coming." Ta Jin saluted. "Sir, please, sit down. We have much to discuss." The general gestured to the empty chair. "This is Minister Kim from Intelligence." The woman nodded. Her eyes were cold. Ta Jin and Su Mai sat down. The air felt heavy. 3 days ago, began General Park, Dr. Hyun Woo made a discovery. "Doctor, please explain." Dr. Hyun Woo cleared his throat. His hand shook slightly as he touched his datapad. A hologram appeared above the table. It showed communications logs, star charts, and images of people, high-ranking military and government officials. "During the final months of the war," said Dr. Hyun Woo, "I was analyzing Krell communications we had intercepted. I found patterns, strange patterns." He pointed to the data streams, hidden messages, but they weren't from Krell to Krell. His voice dropped. They were from humans to Krell. Silence filled the room. "Are you saying we had traitors?" asked Ta Jin. "Not had," said Minister Kim. Cave traitors, who are now scattered across the galaxy. Commander Han Sung leaned forward. His voice was rough from years of breathing battlefield smoke. 12 high-ranking officials, admirals, scientists, even a planetary governor, all disappeared in the confusion after the victory. "But why?" asked Su Mai. "We won. What did they gain by helping the Krell?" "Money," said Admiral Lee. "Power. The usual reasons men betray their kind." Hyun Woo shook his head. "It's more than that. They took things when they left. Important things." He showed another image. Weapon schematics, biological research data, star maps with routes marked in red. "They're planning something." General Park stood up. His shadow fell across the table. "Captain Ta Jin, the United Earth government has formed a special task force, a hunting party. Your war record makes you the obvious choice to lead it." Ta Jin felt a cold weight in his stomach. "I was looking forward to retirement, sir." "We all were," said the general. "But the war was just the beginning, it seems." Minister Kim spoke. Her voice was like ice. "The traitors have fled to the edges of our territory. They have knowledge and technology that could restart the war or worse. They must be found. They must be stopped." Ta Jin looked at Su Mai. Her face showed nothing, but he knew her well enough. She was ready for another mission, always ready. "What resources will I have?" asked Ta Jin. Han Sung smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. The best ship in the fleet, the Vengeance *, just completed. Stealth systems, advanced weapons, a crew of 50, handpicked. And me, said Dr. Yunwu. I can track their communications, find their hiding places. Ta Jin nodded slowly. When do we leave? Tomorrow, said General Park. Your first target is former Admiral Du Young. He's hiding in Sarah's station. The meeting ended an hour later. Ta Jin and Su Mei walked through the station to the docking bay. You're quiet, said Su Mei. I thought it was over, said Ta Jin. I thought we could rest. Would you have been happy growing plants on some colony world? Ta Jin almost smiled. Probably not. The docking bay was huge. Ships of all sizes filled the space. But one stood out. The Vengeance *. It was sleek and dark, unlike the bulky warships that had fought the Krell. It looked fast, even standing still. She's beautiful, said Su Mei. She's a weapon, corrected Ta Jin, just like us. The crew quarters on the Vengeance * were small but comfortable. Ta Jin placed his few belongings in the captain's cabin and sat on the edge of the bed. His old uniform hung in the small closet. His medals were in a box he never opened. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Enter, he said. Dr. Hyunwoo stepped in. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around the cabin. Doctor, said Ta Jin, is everything ready for tomorrow? Yes. No. I mean. Hyunwoo closed the door. There's something I didn't say in the meeting. Something I found in the Krell communications. Ta Jin gestured to the chair. Sit, tell me. Hyunwoo sat but leaned forward, speaking quietly. The traitors. They weren't just passing information. They were getting something in return. What? I don't know exactly. But the Krell were sending data. Massive amounts. Star charts of regions we've never explored. And something else. He pulled out his data pad and showed a strange symbol. This appears in all the secret communications. I don't know what it means. The symbol looked like a spiral with 3 lines cutting through it. Ta Jin had never seen anything like it. Could it be a Krell military symbol? He asked. No, I've studied all their known iconography. This is different. And Hyunwoo hesitated. The Krell seemed afraid of it. Ta Jin frowned. The Krell don't show fear. We learned that the hard way. I know. That's what worries me. Hyunwoo stood up. I'll keep studying it. But I thought you should know. There's more to this mission than hunting traitors. After the doctor left, Ta Jin lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the battlefields of the last 7 years. The burned planets, the dead ships floating in space. And now, a new mission, a new fight. His communicator beeped. It was Su Mei. Captain, Commander Han Sung is here. He wants to introduce the crew. Ta Jin sighed. I'll be right there. The ship's main hall was crowded with people. 50 crew members stood in lines. They were young, most of them. The war had taken the older ones. Han Sung stood at the front, his gray hair neatly combed, his uniform crisp. He smiled when he saw Ta Jin. Captain, your crew awaits. Ta Jin walked down the line, nodding to each person. Engineers, pilots, soldiers, all watching him with wide eyes. The hero of Proxima. He hated that name. Sir, said a young woman with a technician's badge. It's an honor to serve with you. What's your name? Asked Ta Jin. Jin Ha, sir. Communications specialist. Were you at the Battle of Europa? Her eyes widened. Yes, sir. On the Defiant *. That was a hard fight. You did well to survive it. He continued down the line. A tall man with a pilot's insignia. Die 1, sir. I flew fighters at Proxima. Ta Jin remembered the fighter squadrons, small against the massive Krell ships. So many had died that day. You're brave, Die 1. We'll need that bravery again." When he'd met everyone, Ta Jin stood at the front of the hall. The crew watched him, waiting. What could he tell them? That they were hunting their own kind now. That the war they thought was over might only be beginning. "Tomorrow," he began, "we start a new mission. Not against the Krell this time, but against those who betrayed us to them." He paused, seeing the confusion on their faces. "I won't lie to you. This mission will take us to dangerous places. We will face enemies who know our tactics, our weapons, our weaknesses. They were our leaders once. Now they're traitors." The room was silent. "But you were chosen for this crew because you are the best. Because you fought and survived against impossible odds. Because you never gave up." Ta Jin looked at each face. "The war taught us how strong we can be. Now we will show the traitors what that strength means." After the meeting, Han Sung walked with Ta Jin to the bridge. "Good speech," said the commander. "They'll follow you anywhere now." "I don't want them to follow me blindly," said Ta Jin. "I want them to understand what we're doing and why." "Do you understand it?" asked Han Sung. Ta Jin stopped walking. "What do you mean?" "These traitors, they're not fools. They had everything. Rank, power, respect. Why risk it all? Why betray humanity when we were winning the war? You think there's more to this than we've been told." Han Sung's eyes narrowed. "I think Minister Kim knows more than she's saying. I think we're being used to clean up a mess that someone else made." "Then why are you here?" asked Ta Jin. "Same reason as you." Han Sung smiled, but his eyes were hard. "To find the truth." The next morning, final preparations were made. The *Vengeance* hummed with activity. Supplies were loaded. Systems checked. Weapons tested. Ta Jin stood on the bridge, watching the crew work. Su Mi stood beside him, her data pad showing the ship's status. "All systems green," she reported. "We're ready to depart." "And our destination?" "Course set for Sarah Station. Estimated travel time, 3 days." Dr. Hyun-woo hurried onto the bridge, carrying several data pads. "Captain, I prepared a file on Admiral Du Young." He handed one of the pads to Ta Jin. "Everything we know about him and his possible location on Ceres." Ta Jin scanned the information. Du Young had been a fleet admiral, commanding the 3rd Defense Fleet. Decorated, respected, and all the time, passing information to the Krell. "It says here he disappeared 2 weeks before the final battle," said Ta Jin. "Yes," said Hyun-woo. "He took a small ship and fled. We thought he'd been killed in Krell territory. Now we know he went to Ceres." "Why Ceres?" asked Su Mi. "It's a mining colony. Rough place, not where I'd expect an admiral to hide." "Ceres is also a hub for black market trade," said Han Sung, joining them on the bridge. "No questions asked. Perfect place to sell military secrets." Ta Jin nodded. "Or to meet other traders." A young officer approached. "Captain, we have clearance to depart." "Thank you, Ensign." Ta Jin sat in the captain's chair. It felt strange after years of field command. "Lieutenant Su Mi, signal Victory Station that we're ready." Su Mi spoke into her communicator. The docking clamps released with a thud that vibrated through the ship. "Take us out," ordered Ta Jin. Slow and steady, the *Vengeance* moved away from Victory Station. Through the view screen, Ta Jin watched Earth grow smaller. He remembered the first time he'd left Earth. A young soldier heading to the front lines. He'd been afraid then. Now he felt only determination. "Course to Ceres locked in," reported the navigator. "Ready for FTL jump." "Engage," said Ta Jin. The stars blurred. The *Vengeance* leaped forward, faster than light, carrying its hunters towards their prey. Ceres Station hung in the darkness of the asteroid belt, a massive structure built into the largest asteroid. Lights glowed from hundreds of windows. Ships docked and departed, carrying ore and supplies. The *Vengeance* approached slowly, its stealth systems active. It looked like an ordinary transport ship now, its military nature hidden. "Scanning the station," reported Jinha from her console. "Heavy security around the main docks. Multiple weapon emplacements. Expected for a mining colony?" asked Tajin. "No, sir. This is military-grade equipment. Recent installation from the look of it." Han Sung frowned. "Du Yum has been busy. Those aren't there to keep miners in line." Tajin studied the station's layout on his screen. "We'll need to dock at the commercial port. Avoid the security checkpoints. I can create false IDs," said Hyunwoo. "Make us look like traitors." "Good. Su-mei, you'll come with me to the station. Small team, less noticeable." "And our approach to finding Du Young?" asked Su-mei. Tajin thought for a moment. "We start in the lower levels. The bars, the gambling halls, places where people talk." Han Sung nodded. "I have contacts on Ceres, people who owe me favors. I'll arrange some meetings." The Vengeance docked at a small commercial port on the far side of the station. The official didn't look twice at their false IDs. Too many ships came and went for careful checking. Tajin, Su-mei, and Han Sung left the ship dressed as civilian traders. Their weapons were hidden but accessible. The station corridors were crowded and noisy. Music blared from bars. Vendors called out, selling food and goods from across the system. "This way," said Han Sung, leading them toward a lift. "My contact is in the lower levels." The lift took them down, past the respectable commercial areas to the parts of Ceres that didn't appear in the promotional materials. The corridors here were dimly lit. The people moved quickly, eyes down, hands near hidden weapons. Han Sung stopped at a small door marked with a faded red symbol. He knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. The door opened. A woman with a scared face looked out. "Han Sung, I heard you were dead." "Not yet, Ara, though many have tried." She snorted and stepped back, letting them enter a small, cluttered room. Maps and data screens covered the walls. Weapons lay on tables. "These are your friends?" she asked, looking at Tajin and Su-mei with suspicion. "They're looking for someone." "So am I." Ara sat behind a desk covered with data pads. "Who?" "Admiral Du Young," said Tajin. Ara's eyes widened slightly. "The military man. Why would traitors be looking for him?" "We're not traitors," said Tajin. "And he's not just a military man. He's a traitor." "Bold words," said Ara. "Dangerous words on Ceres these days." "What do you mean?" asked Su-mei. "Things have changed here. 6 months ago, a new group moved in, took over the lower docks, brought in weapons, paid off security." Ara leaned forward. "Their leader is your admiral, but he's not hiding. He's building something." "Building what?" asked Han Sung. "Don't know, but ships come and go from the lower docks. Workers brought in, never seen again." She lowered her voice. "People say they hear screams sometimes." Tajin felt cold. "We need to get to those docks." "Not easy," said Ara. "Heavy security. Automated systems. Guards with military training." "Can you get us maps?" "Security rotations." Ara studied him. "You're going after him." "It wasn't a question." "You'll need help. I know someone. He hates Du Young more than anyone. Lost his family to one of the Admiral's projects." "Who?" asked Han Sung. "Jun Ho. Used to be security on Ceres. Now he's a mercenary. Knows the station better than anyone." "Where do we find him?" asked Tajin. "He'll find you," said Ara. "Once I tell them who you're after." As they left, Su-mei moved close to Tajin. "Do you trust her?" "No," said Tajin. "But Han Sung does. For now, that's enough." They walked back toward the upper levels. The hunt had begun. Somewhere on this station, Admiral Du Young was building something. Something worth betraying humanity for. And Tajin would find it, no matter the cost. The war was over, but as he told his crew, it was just the beginning. The lower levels of Cirrus Station smelled of oil and sweat. Ta Jin and Su Mai sat in a dimly lit bar called the Broken Drill. The tables were sticky. The air was thick with smoke. Perfect place to be invisible. "He's late," said Su Mai, checking the time on her wrist device. "He'll come," said Ta Jin. He took a sip of his drink and tried not to make a face. It tasted like engine cleaner. 3 days had passed since their meeting with Aira. 3 days of careful movement through the station. Watching. Listening. Learning the rhythms of this place. The door opened. A man walked in. Tall, with broad shoulders and a face that had seen too many fights. His right eye was replaced with a cybernetic implant that glowed faintly blue in the dim light. He scanned the room, then walked directly to their table. "You're the ones looking for Du Young," he said. Not a question. Tai Jin nodded. "Jun Ho." The man sat down without being invited. "Aira says you're military. Here to arrest the admiral." "Not exactly," said Ta Jin. Jun Ho's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused. "What then?" "We're here to stop him. Whatever it takes." A small smile touched Jun Ho's scared lips. "Good." He leaned forward. "Du Young came here 7 months ago. Quiet at first, just another refugee from the war. But he had money. Lots of it. Started buying influence. Taking control of the lower docks." "What's he doing down there?" asked Su Mai. "Building something. Converting cargo ships into war vessels. But that's not the worst part." Jun Ho's voice dropped. "He's experimenting on people." Ta Jin's hand tightened around his glass. "What kind of experiments?" "Don't know exactly. But people go in. Things come out." Jun Ho's human eye darkened. "My brother worked security for him. Saw something he shouldn't have. Next day, they said he had an accident. What they gave me to bury." He stopped, jaw tight. It wasn't fully human anymore. Silence fell over the table. The noise of the bar seemed far away. "We need to get into his facility," said Ta Jin. "You and everyone else who's lost someone," said Jun Ho. "Security is tight. Automated turrets, guards with military training, force fields at every entrance. But there's a way in," said Su Mai. It wasn't a question. Jun Ho nodded. "Old maintenance tunnels, from when they first built the station. Most are blocked or monitored now, but I know one they missed. Small, tight fit, but it'll get you inside the outer perimeter." "And then?" asked Ta Jin. "Then you're on your own." Jun Ho tapped the table with a metal finger. "Unless you take me with you." Ta Jin studied the man. The hate in his human eye was real. But hate made people reckless. "This isn't about revenge," said Ta Jin. "Everything is about revenge," countered Jun Ho. "But I know the layout. The guard rotations. The security systems. You need me." Ta Jin looked at Su Mai. She gave a small nod. "All right," said Ta Jin. "But you follow my orders. No solo missions." Jun Ho's smile was cold. "As long as Du Young ends up dead, I don't care who gives the orders." Back on the Vengeance they gathered in the command center. Dr. Hyunwoo and Commander Han Sung listened as Ta Jin explained the plan. "The maintenance tunnel leads to the lower cargo area," said Ta Jin, pointing to the station schematics on the screen. "From there, we make our way to Du Young's main facility. According to Jun Ho, that's where the experiments happen." "What kind of resistance should we expect?" asked Han Sung. "Guards with military hardware. Automated systems. Jun Ho says Du Young has been recruiting ex-soldiers. People who fought in the war and have nowhere to go now." Hyunwoo frowned at his datapad. "I've been monitoring communications from the lower docks. They're using encrypted channels, but I've broken parts of it." He put his pad on the table, showing intercepted messages. "They're expecting a ship tomorrow. Something called Project Rebirth is mentioned several times." "What is it?" asked Sumai. I don't know, admitted Hyunwoo. But whatever it is, they're excited about it. And nervous. Ta-Jin studied the messages. Then we move tonight. Before this ship arrives. Small team. Me, Su-mi, Han-sung, and Jun-ho. Hyunwoo, you stay on the ship and monitor communications. What's the goal? Asked Han-sung. Capture or kill. Capture if possible, said Ta-Jin. Du-young has information we need. About the other traitors. About what they're planning. And if capture isn't possible? Asked Sumai. Ta-Jin's face hardened. Then we make sure whatever he's building never leaves this station. The maintenance tunnel was smaller than Ta-Jin expected. They crawled on hands and knees through darkness that smelled of rust and old oil. Their helmets provided light and filtered air. The walls were close enough to touch on both sides. The tunnel ended at a small metal door. Jun-ho worked on the manual lock while the others waited tensely. Finally, there was a click, and the door swung open to reveal a dimly lit storage room. Cargo level 6, whispered Jun-ho. Not many guards here. Mostly automated systems. They climbed out one by one, weapons ready. The room was filled with crates and old equipment. A layer of dust covered everything. Which way? Asked Ta-Jin. Jun-ho pointed to a door across the room. Down 2 levels. That's where the main facility is. They moved silently through abandoned cargo areas. The station's lower levels were a maze of corridors and storage rooms. Twice they had to hide as security drones floated past, scanning for intruders. Strange, whispered Han-sung after the second drone passed. Those are military-grade scanners. Top of the line. Du-young isn't taking chances, said Sumai. They'd reached a lift that would take them down to the facility level. Jun-ho shook his head. Too risky. They monitor all lift usage. Stairs? Asked Ta-Jin. This way. They followed Jun-ho to a maintenance ladder that ran between floors. The metal was cold under Ta-Jin's hands as they climbed down. 2 levels below, they emerged into a corridor that looked different from the others. The walls were clean. New lights hummed overhead. The air smelled of disinfectant. We're in, said Jun-ho. The main lab is ahead. Security will be heavier here. He was right. As they approached the end of the corridor, they spotted 2 guards in front of a large door. They wore battle armor and carried pulse rifles. Ex-military, whispered Han-sung. The way they stand. The way they hold their weapons. We need to take them quietly, said Ta-Jin. He reached for the stun pistol at his belt. Wait, said Sumai. She pointed to a small vent near the ceiling. Cameras. Ta-Jin cursed under his breath. We need a distraction. Jun-ho smiled. From his pocket, he pulled a small metal sphere. Scrambler, he explained. Military grade. Knocks out electronics in a 20-meter radius. Cameras, comms, even their weapon systems. For how long? Asked Ta-Jin. 30 seconds, maybe less. That's enough. Ta-Jin nodded to Su-mi and Han-sung. Ready? They took positions at the corner. Weapons ready. Now, said Ta-Jin. Jun-ho activated the scrambler and tossed it down the corridor. It bounced, then released a pulse of blue energy. The lights flickered. The guards' helmets went dark. What the one began, but never finished. Ta-Jin and Su-mi moved fast, firing stun rounds with perfect accuracy. The guards dropped without a sound. Han-sung was already at the door, working on the lock with a hacking device. 15 seconds, warned Jun-ho. The door slid open. They dragged the unconscious guards inside just as the lights stabilized. The scrambler had burned out, a smoking husk on the floor. They found themselves in a large laboratory. White walls, bright lights. The room was filled with equipment Ta-Jin didn't recognize. Screens displayed data and images that made no sense to him. But what caught his attention were the tanks. A dozen glass cylinders lined the far wall. Each contained a floating figure, human in shape, but wrong. Skin too pale, limbs too long, and where the face should be, only smooth flesh with small breathing holes. What in hell? Whispered Han Sung. Dr. Hyunwoo's voice came through their comms. Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings from your location, and biological signatures that don't match any known species. I can see why, said Ta Jin, moving closer to the tanks. He's creating something. Hybrids, said Su Mei, looking at a nearby screen. Human and Krell DNA. Combined. Why? Asked Han Sung. The war is over. The Krell are defeated. Are they? Came a new voice. They spun around. A man stood in a doorway they hadn't noticed. Tall, white hair cut short. The uniform of an Earth Fleet admiral, but with insignia removed. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. Admiral Du Young, said Ta Jin, raising his weapon. Captain Ta Jin, replied Du Young. He seemed unsurprised. The hero of Proxima. I wondered when they would send you after me. You're under arrest for treason, said Ta Jin. Surrender now. Du Young laughed. It was a hollow sound. Treason. Is that what they told you? He stepped into the room, seemingly unconcerned about the weapons pointed at him. What do you think I've betrayed, Captain? Humanity, said Ta Jin. You gave information to the Krell. You helped them kill millions of your own kind. I helped save billions, corrected Du Young. He moved to one of the tanks, placing a hand on the glass. Do you know what these are? Abominations, said Jun Ho, his voice filled with hate. Like the thing you turned my brother into. Du Young glanced at Jun Ho. Ah, the local. Yes, there were failures in the early tests. Unfortunate, but necessary. Jun Ho raised his weapon, but Ta Jin stopped him with a gesture. Explain, said Ta Jin to Du Young. Before I decide you're not worth taking alive. Du Young smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You think the war is over. You think we won. He shook his head. The Krell were never the real enemy, Captain. They were just the first wave. What are you talking about? Asked Su Mei. 18 years ago, our deep space probes detected something at the edge of the galaxy. Something massive, moving toward us. Du Young's voice became quiet. The government buried the information, too afraid of panic. But some of us knew. Some of us prepared. The Krell discovered it too. They knew they couldn't fight it alone. So they attacked us, not to destroy humanity, but to test us, to see if we were strong enough to be allies. That's insane, said Han Sung. They killed millions. War is the ultimate test, said Du Young. And we passed. Barely. He gestured to the tanks. These are the next step. Hybrids with the strength of the Krell and the adaptability of humans. Soldiers for the real war that's coming. Ta Jin felt cold despite the room's warmth. You expect us to believe the Krell attacked Earth as some kind of recruitment drive. Believe what you want, said Du Young. But the truth is coming, whether you're ready or not. The director understands this. That's why we did what we had to do. The director? Asked Ta Jin. Who is that? Du Young smiled again. The one who sees further than any of you. He tapped something on his wrist. And now, I'm afraid our time is up. Alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed. Warning, said a computerized voice. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5 minutes to detonation. You're insane, said Ta Jin, grabbing Du Young's arm. You'll kill everyone on this level. A necessary sacrifice, said Du Young calmly. But don't worry about me, Captain. I have no intention of dying today. A hidden door opened in the wall behind him. 3 figures stepped out. They looked human at first glance, but moved wrong. Too fluid, too fast. Their eyes glowed yellow in the red emergency lights. Early prototypes, said Du Young as he backed toward the door. Not perfect, but effective. They'll keep you busy while I depart. Stop him, shouted Ta Jin, But the hybrid creatures were already moving, faster than anything human. The first one reached Su Mei. She fired, hitting it in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. Han Sung and Jun Ho opened fire on the others. The lab filled with the sound of energy weapons and breaking glass. "Captain," came Hyunwoo's panicked voice over the comms. "I'm reading a massive energy buildup. If those labs explode, they could breach the station's hull." Ta Jin ducked as one of the hybrids leaped over a table at him. "Su Mei, go after Du Young. We'll handle these things." Su Mei was already moving, slipping through the door the Admiral had used. Ta Jin fired at the creature attacking him, aiming for its head. This time, it went down. 3 minutes to detonation, warned the computer. "We need to stop that countdown," shouted Han Sung, grappling with another hybrid. Jun Ho fired repeatedly at the third creature as it climbed along the ceiling. The main control room, one level down. They fought their way through the lab. The last hybrid fell when Han Sung emptied his weapon into its torso. They ran for the exit, leaving the broken creatures and the strange tanks behind. The corridors were chaos now, alarms blaring, people running. Most were scientists and security, fleeing the self-destruct sequence. "This way," shouted Jun Ho, leading them to another stairwell. They descended quickly. The control room was a large chamber filled with computer terminals. 3 technicians were frantically working at the stations. "Everyone out," ordered Ta Jin, showing his weapon. The technicians didn't argue. 2 minutes to detonation," said the computer. Han Sung went to the main console. "I need to bypass the security lockouts." "Can you do it?" asked Ta Jin. "I was fleet engineering before I was command," said Han Sung, his fingers flying over the controls. "But it'll be close." Ta Jin touched his comm. "Su Mei, report." Her voice came back, breathless, following Du Young. "He's heading for the private docks. He has a ship waiting." "Don't engage alone," said Ta Jin. "Wait for us." "No time. He's about to board. I have tow." Her comm cut off in a burst of static. "Su Mei." Ta Jin looked at Han Sung. "How much longer?" "Almost." "Got it." Han Sung entered a final command. "Self-destruct sequence aborted," said the computer. "Safety systems online." Jun Ho let out a breath. That was close. "Too close," said Ta Jin. "Let's get to Su Mei." They ran back up the stairs and through the corridors toward the private docks. The alarms had stopped, but people were still evacuating. No one tried to stop them. The private dock was small, meant for personal craft. A sleek black ship sat on the landing pad, engines glowing as they powered up. Near the boarding ramp, Su Mei crouched behind a cargo container. Energy blasts hit the container as someone fired from the ship's entrance. "Su Mei," Ta Jin called, taking cover nearby. "Status." "Du Young is boarding," she replied. 3 guards with him. "Military hardware." "We can't let him leave," said Han Sung. "He has too much information." Ta Jin looked at the ship. The ramp was still down. Jun Ho, left flank. Han Sung, right. Su Mei, and I will draw their fire. On my mark. They moved into position. The ship's engines grew louder, preparing for launch. "Now," shouted Ta Jin. They opened fire from multiple angles. 2 of the guards fell immediately, caught in the crossfire. The third retreated up the ramp. Du Young was already inside. "Ramps closing," warned Su Mei. Ta Jin ran forward, firing as he went. He leaped, catching the edge of the ramp as it lifted. His fingers slipped on the smooth metal. A hand grabbed his wrist. Su Mei, also hanging from the rising ramp. "Together," she shouted over the engine noise. They pulled themselves up, rolling onto the ramp as it sealed against the ship's hull. The internal door was still open. They could see the guard taking position behind a crate in the cargo hold. Ta Jin signaled to Su Mei. 3, 2, 1. They burst through the door from opposite sides. Their shots found the guard before he could fire. He dropped, his weapon clattering to the floor. Hyunwoo, Ta Jin called over his comm. Du Young's ship is launching. Track it. Already on it, came the reply. But Captain, there's something else. I'm detecting a larger vessel approaching the station. It's not broadcasting identification. The ship shuddered as it detached from the dock. Through a small window, Ta Jin saw the station falling away. Where's Du Young? Asked Su Mei. Bridge. This way. Ta Jin moved forward, weapon ready. The ship was small but well designed. Military layout. They moved through the narrow corridors until they reached the bridge door. It was sealed. Can you open it? Asked Ta Jin. Su Mei examined the lock. Yes, but it'll take time. We don't have time, said Ta Jin. He aimed his weapon at the control panel and fired. The door sparked but didn't open. Then a voice came through the intercom. A valiant effort, Captain, said Du Young. But this door is designed to withstand much more than a hand weapon. It's over, Admiral, said Ta Jin. This ship is being tracked. You have nowhere to go. On the contrary, I have an appointment to keep. Du Young's voice was calm. With the director. He's quite eager to meet you, by the way. The hero of Proxima. The man who proved humanity can fight. Who is the director? Demanded Ta Jin. What are you planning? The salvation of our species, Captain. Though I doubt you'll see it that way. There was a pause. Ah, right on schedule. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Captain, came Hyunwoo's urgent voice. The larger vessel has locked onto Du Young's ship with a tractor beam. They're pulling him in. Ta Jin looked out the window. A massive ship had appeared, dwarfing Du Young's vessel. It was unlike any design he'd seen before. Not Earth, not Krell. Something else. Fascinating, isn't it? Said Du Young through the intercom. The first of many. Built with technology even the Krell don't understand. The smaller ship was being drawn into a docking bay in the larger vessel's side. I'm afraid this is where we part ways, Captain, continued Du Young. Escape pods are on the lower deck. I suggest you use them quickly. Once we're aboard the mothership, this vessel will be disposed of. Warning lights began to flash on the walls. Self-destruct sequence initiated, said the ship's computer. 2 minutes to detonation. Goodbye, Captain Ta Jin, said Du Young. Perhaps we'll meet again. In the war that's coming. The intercom went silent. We need to get to the escape pods, said Su Mei. They ran back the way they had come, past the dead guard, to the lower deck. The escape pod bay had 4 small pods, each large enough for 2 people. Hyunwoo called Ta Jin as they boarded a pod. Du Young's ship is about to explode. We're in an escape pod. Track us. Launching beacon now, said Su Mei, pressing a button on the pod's console. They strapped in as the pod ejected from the doomed ship. Through the small viewport, they watched as Du Young's vessel was drawn completely into the massive mothership. Moments later, there was a flash of light as it exploded inside the larger vessel's docking bay. Did it damage the mothership? Asked Ta Jin. Su Mei checked the pod's sensors. Minor damage only. They're already moving away. The mothership turned slowly, then accelerated, leaving Cirrus Station behind. In seconds, it had vanished into the darkness of space. Their pod floated silently, emergency beacons blinking. In the distance, they could see the Vengeance moving toward them. Do you think he was telling the truth? Asked Su Mei quietly. About another enemy coming. Ta Jin watched the stars. Somewhere out there, Du Young was meeting with the mysterious director, planning something. Something that made the war with the Krell look like a training exercise. I don't know, he said finally, but we're going to find out. The hunt had only just begun. The Vengeance moved through space, its engines humming quietly. 7 days had passed since Cirrus Station. 7 days of questions without answers. Ta Jin sat in his quarters, reading reports on his datapad. Du Young's strange ship had disappeared without a trace. The hybrid creatures they had found were being studied by Earth scientists, but the results were disturbing. Not just Krell and human DNA, but something else, something unknown. A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Enter," he said. Dr. Hyunwoo stepped in, carrying his ever-present datapad. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't been sleeping. "Captain, I've finished analyzing the data we recovered from Du Young's lab," he said, sitting down without being asked. "It's worse than we thought." "How so?" asked Ta Jin. Hyunwoo placed his pad on the table. It showed complex genetic sequences. The hybrids weren't just combinations of human and Krell. There's a third genetic component, something I've never seen before. Could it be from another alien species? Possibly. But it's not in any of our databases. Hyunwoo looked troubled. And there's something else. The communications we intercepted. I've been decoding more of them. Du Young mentioned a meeting point, a place called Santos Prime. Ta Jin frowned. The jungle planet. It's barely habitable. We tried to establish a colony there 15 years ago. The colony failed officially. But according to these messages, someone is still there. Someone important. Another traitor. Hyunwoo nodded. Former chief scientist Ji-hoon. He was head of xenobiology research before he disappeared a year ago. Everyone thought he died in a lab accident. And now he's on Santos Prime, said Ta Jin. Doing what? The messages don't say exactly, but they mention successful incubation and maturing specimens. Whatever Du Young was doing on Ceres, Ji-hoon is doing it on a larger scale. Ta Jin stood up. Set course for Xantos Prime. And contact Earth Command. Tell them we need backup. If Ji-hoon has a larger operation, we'll need more firepower. Xantos Prime hung in space before them, a world of green and blue. Thick jungles covered most of its surface. The atmosphere was heavy with moisture. Perfect for plants, difficult for humans. Scan the surface, ordered Ta Jin on the bridge. Look for any signs of a research facility. Jin Ho worked at her console, frowning. There's too much interference, Captain. The jungle canopy blocks most scans, and there are unusual energy patterns disrupting our sensors. Deliberate jamming? Asked Su Mei. Possibly, replied Jin Ha, or a natural phenomenon. Xantos was known for strange magnetic fields. Ta Jin studied the planet on the view screen. We'll need to go down there. Search on foot. That won't be easy, said Han Sung. The jungle is dense, dangerous wildlife. And if Ji-hoon has defenses set up, we won't be alone, said Ta Jin. He turned to Jin Ha. Any sign of the asterisk retribution asterisk? Jin Ha checked her console. They just entered the system, Captain. ETA 20 minutes. The asterisk retribution asterisk was a battle cruiser, 3 times the size of the asterisk vengeance asterisk. It carried 100 soldiers and enough firepower to level a small city. Earth Command had sent it as soon as they heard about Ji-hoon. Good, said Ta Jin. We'll coordinate with Captain Young-soo once they arrive. In the meantime, I want a landing team prepared. Small group, well armed. We'll scout the area first. An hour later, the asterisk retribution asterisk had arrived. Captain Young-soo's face appeared on the view screen. He was younger than Ta Jin had expected, with sharp features and alert eyes. Captain Ta Jin, he said. An honor to meet the hero of Proxima. Ta Jin ignored the title. Thank you for the support, Captain. Have you been briefed on the situation? Yes. Former Chief Scientist Ji-hoon. Possible illegal research facility. Potential connection to Admiral Du Young and other traitors. Young-soo's expression was serious. My ship and crew are at your disposal. We need to locate the facility first, said Ta Jin. I'm planning a ground reconnaissance mission. Agreed. I'll send a squad of my best soldiers to accompany you. Ta Jin nodded. We leave in 1 hour. The dropship descended through Xantos Prime's thick atmosphere. Rain pounded against the metal hull. Lightning flashed in the clouds around them. Tajin checked his environment suit. The air on Santos was breathable, but filled with spores that could cause severe allergic reactions. The suit would filter them out. It also provided some protection against the planet's wildlife, much of which was poisonous. With him were Su Mi, Han Sung, and 5 soldiers from the Retribution led by Lieutenant Da Hyun. Young Su had remained on his ship to coordinate from orbit. "Landing zone in sight," reported the pilot. "Clearing at the edge of the northern jungle, closest to the energy disturbance." The dropship touched down with a slight bump. The ramp lowered, letting in hot, wet air even through the environmental filters. "Move out," ordered Tajin. "Stay alert. Stay together." They stepped onto Xantos Prime. The clearing was small, surrounded by massive trees with blue-green leaves. The ground was soft, covered in moss-like growth. The air smelled sweet, almost too sweet. "Sensors active," said Lieutenant Da Hyun. His soldiers spread out, scanning the jungle edge. No immediate threats detected. "Which way to the energy source?" asked Tajin. Su Mi checked her handheld scanner. "South. About 5 kilometers, through the densest part of the jungle." Tajin nodded. "Let's move. Lieutenant, your team on point. Han Sung, bring up the rear." They entered the jungle. Immediately, the light dimmed. The canopy overhead was thick, letting through only occasional beams of sunlight. The plants grew close together, forcing them to cut a path with laser cutters. "This would take days without proper equipment," muttered Han Sung. "There's an easier way," came a voice from above them. They all raised their weapons. A figure dropped from a tree branch, landing lightly before them. A woman in worn clothing that blended with the jungle. Her skin was tan dark, her black hair tied back. She carried a long knife and what looked like a homemade projectile weapon. "Who are you?" demanded Tajin, his weapon pointed at her. "HFY," she replied. "I live here, have for 5 years, since the colony officially failed." She made air quotes with her fingers. "You were a colonist?" asked Su Mi. "I was a xenobotanist, came to study the plants, stayed when everyone else left." HFY looked them over. "Military, here for Ji-hoon, I'm guessing." Tajin lowered his weapon slightly. "You know him. Everyone here knows him. Hard to miss the only human building on the planet, and all the strange things coming and going from it." "There are other people here?" asked Han Sung. "A few. Former colonists who stayed. Researchers who couldn't leave their work. Some who just preferred the jungle to Earth's cities." HFY pointed to a barely visible path. "That's the way to Ji-hoon's facility. But you won't get in easily. It's guarded, not by humans." "By what then?" asked Tajin. HFY's face darkened. "Things that used to be human. Now they're something else." Tajin exchanged looks with Su Mi. "More hybrids. We need to get inside that facility," said Tajin. "Will you guide us?" HFY studied him. "What will you do when you find Ji-hoon?" "Arrest him. Stop whatever he's doing here." She seemed to consider this. "Good. He's changed this place. The jungle used to be peaceful. Now there are new creatures. Dangerous ones. They hunt at night." She nodded. "I'll take you. But we need to move fast. Be at the facility before dark." They followed HFY through the jungle. She moved quickly, finding paths where they saw none. The going was easier, but still slow. The heat was oppressive, even through their environmental suits. "How much longer?" asked Lieutenant Da Hyun after 2 hours of walking. "Close now," said HFY. "Just over that rise." They climbed a small hill and looked down into a valley. In the center stood a large structure. Not the temporary buildings of the colony, but something permanent. Metal walls, defense towers, a perimeter fence that shimmered with energy. That's not a research outpost, said Han Sung. That's a fortress. Ta Jin used the scope on his rifle to study the facility. Guards patrolled the walls. They moved with the same fluid grace as the hybrids on Ceres, but these looked more human. Their skin was normal color. Only their movements and glowing yellow eyes showed they weren't fully human anymore. How many people inside? Asked Ta Jin. Don't know exactly, said HFY. Dozens at least. Scientists, security, workers. Ji-hoon lives in the central building. The tall one with no windows. Su-mei scanned the facility with her handheld device. Heavy energy readings, power plant inside. And something else. Biological signatures, but they're strange. Not human. Not Krell. Like the third DNA component, said Ta Jin. Whatever Du Young was working with. How do we get in? Asked Han Sung. HFY pointed to a small structure outside the main perimeter. That's the water filtration plant. It connects to the main facility by an underground pipe, large enough to crawl through. They don't guard it? Asked Lieutenant Dae-hyun. They do. 2 guards, but they change shifts at dusk. There's a gap of about 3 minutes. Ta Jin checked the time. That's in 40 minutes. We need to get closer. Find a hiding place near the filtration plant. They moved down the hill, keeping to the cover of the jungle. As they got closer to the facility, they could hear sounds. Machinery, voices, and something else. A low, pulsing hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground. What is that noise? Whispered Han Sung. It started 3 months ago, said HFY. Day and night. Sometimes louder. The plants near the facility have changed since then. Growing faster. Different. They reached the edge of the cleared area around the facility. The filtration plant was a small building about 50 meters from the main perimeter. 2 guards stood outside, just as HFY had said. Now we wait, said Ta Jin. The minutes passed slowly. The sky began to darken as Santos Prime's sun set. Strange calls echoed from the jungle around them. The guards stood motionless, their yellow eyes scanning the area. Almost time, whispered HFY. The guards suddenly straightened. They turned and walked toward the main gate, moving in perfect unison. Now, said Ta Jin, move fast, stay low. They ran across the open ground to the filtration plant. Lieutenant Dae-hyun reached the door first, using a small device to bypass the lock. They slipped inside just as new guards emerged from the main facility. The plant was filled with machinery. Pumps and filters processed the local water, making it safe for humans. At the back, a large pipe ran into the ground. That's our way in, said HFY, pointing to a maintenance hatch on the pipe. Lieutenant Dae-hyun opened the hatch. The pipe was dark and damp, but large enough for them to crawl through. I'll go first, said Ta Jin. Su-mei, behind me. Then HFY. The rest of you follow. Han Sung, bring up the rear. One by one, they entered the pipe. It sloped down gently, leading toward the main facility. The sound of running water echoed around them. The air was damp and smelled of chemicals. After what seemed like hours of crawling, they reached another hatch. Ta Jin listened carefully before opening it. No sounds of movement. He pushed it open and climbed out into a small maintenance room. Pipes and conduits covered the walls. A single light glowed dimly overhead. We're in, he whispered as the others emerged from the pipe. Su-mei, can you access their systems from here? Su-mei examined a computer terminal in the corner. Yes. Give me a minute. She worked quickly, bypassing security protocols. The screen lit up with facility schematics. Got it, she said. We're here, in the lower maintenance level. Ji-hoon's private lab is here, in the central building. 2 levels up. Guards? Asked Han Sung. Everywhere, said Su-mei, but mostly concentrated around the perimeter and the main entrance. The interior is less guarded. They weren't expecting anyone to get this far. What about these areas? Asked Ta Jin, pointing to large sections of the schematic marked in red. Restricted zones, heavy security. That's where the biological signatures are strongest. That's where the specimens are, said HFY. The changed ones. Ta Jin studied the schematic. We need to reach Ji-hoon first. Then deal with whatever he's created here. Lieutenant, you and your men secure our exit route. If anything goes wrong, we may need to leave quickly. Yes, sir, said Da-hyun. What about calling in the retribution for backup? Too risky yet. The energy field around this place might block our communications, and a frontal assault could lead to a self-destruct sequence like on Ceres. We do this quietly. They moved through the maintenance corridors, avoiding patrols. The facility was larger inside than it had appeared. Multiple levels, laboratories, living quarters, and the restricted areas sealed behind heavy doors. The central building was connected to the main facility by a covered walkway. 2 guards stood at the entrance. We need a distraction, whispered Ta Jin. HFY smiled. From her pocket, she took a small object that looked like a seed pod. Cover your ears, she warned. She threw the pod at the far end of the corridor. It exploded with a piercing shriek that echoed through the facility. The guards ran toward the sound, weapons ready. Now, said Ta Jin. They rushed across the walkway and into the central building. Inside, the walls were white and sterile. It felt more like a hospital than a research facility. The hum they had heard outside was louder here, pulsing through the floor. Lab should be on the next level, said Su-mei, checking her scanner. They found a stairwell and climbed up. The second level was a single large room. In the center stood complex equipment surrounding a glowing cylinder, and working at a control panel was a thin man in a white lab coat. Ji-hoon turned as they entered. His face showed no surprise, only mild curiosity. Captain Ta Jin, he said, the hero of Proxima. I wondered when you would find me. Chief Scientist Ji-hoon, said Ta Jin, his weapon pointed at the man. You're under arrest for treason. Ji-hoon smiled slightly. Treason. Is that still the official story? He looked at each of them. Admiral Du Young didn't explain. About what's coming. He tried, said Ta Jin. Some story about a greater threat. A justification for betraying humanity. Not a story, Captain. A fact. Ji-hoon gestured to the glowing cylinder. Come. See for yourself. Ta Jin nodded to Su-mi and Han-sung to keep their weapons ready. He approached the cylinder, keeping Ji-hoon in front of him. The cylinder contained a swirling mass of energy. But as Ta Jin watched, the energy formed shapes. Images, stars, planets, a map of the galaxy. The Krell discovered it first, said Ji-hoon. A mass moving through the void between galaxies, headed for ours. The image zoomed in, showing a vast swarm of objects. They arrive in 15 years, maybe less. What are they? Asked Ta Jin, despite himself. We don't know exactly. The Krell called them the Void. They consume everything they touch. Planets, stars, life. Ji-hoon's voice was calm, as if discussing an interesting scientific paper. The Krell fought them before. Lost badly. That's why they came to our galaxy. Running. And that justifies creating hybrids. Experimenting on humans. The Krell are physically stronger than humans, more resistant to radiation and toxins, but their minds are rigid. They can't adapt quickly enough. Humans are weaker, but our minds. We can imagine solutions they can't. Ji-hoon looked almost proud. The hybrids combine the best of both. And more. More? Asked Su-mi. The third component. From the Void themselves. Genetic material the Krell recovered from their previous encounters. Ji-hoon gestured to a door at the far end of the lab. Would you like to see the results? Before Ta Jin could answer, the facility's alarms began to sound. Warning, said an automated voice. Perimeter breach. Unknown ships entering atmosphere. Ji-hoon frowned. That's not part of the plan. He touched a control panel. Screens lit up, showing the sky above the facility. Ships were descending. Not Earth ships. Not Krell. "Captain," came Lieutenant Da-hyun's voice over the comm. "We have a situation. The Retribution is under attack. Unknown vessels. Captain Young-soo is not responding to hails." Ta-jin felt cold. "Who's attacking?" "Unknown, sir, but they're landing troops outside the facility." "And?" Da-hyun paused. "Sir, they look like the hybrids, but bigger, more advanced." Jae-hoon's face had gone pale. "They're not supposed to be here yet. The director said we had more time." "The director," said Ta-jin. "Who is he? Where is he?" "Not here," said Jae-hoon. He seemed genuinely frightened now. "But he's building our defense, preparing humanity for what's coming." He looked at the screens showing the attacking ships. "But they found us too soon." The facility shook as something exploded outside. The lights flickered. "We need to get out of here," said Han-sung. "Not without answers," said Ta-jin. He grabbed Jae-hoon's arm. "Who is the director? Where do we find him?" Jae-hoon stared at the screens, watching as strange creatures poured from the landed ships. They were like the hybrids, but larger. More alien. Their skin was black and scaled. Their eyes glowed red, not yellow. "Europa," said Jae-hoon finally. "The director is on Europa, Jupiter's moon. The main facility is there, hidden beneath the ice." He looked at Ta-jin. "You need to warn him. Tell him they found us. Tell him Xantos has fallen." Another explosion, closer this time. The lab equipment sparked. "Time to go," said Han-sung. "Agreed," said Ta-jin. "Jae-hoon, you're coming with us." Jae-hoon shook his head. "I can't leave my work. The data must be preserved." He pulled away from Ta-jin and rushed to a console. "I'll transfer everything to a secure server. The director must know what happened here." As he worked, a section of the ceiling collapsed. Debris crashed into the glowing cylinder, shattering it. Energy poured out, swirling around the room. "Look out!" shouted Sumai. The energy surged toward Jae-hoon. It enveloped him, lifting him off the floor. His scream was cut short as his body seemed to dissolve into the swirling mass. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the energy vanished. Jae-hoon was gone. "What just happened?" asked Han-sung, staring at the empty space where Jae-hoon had been. "No time to find out," said Ta-jin. "We need to move. Now." They ran from the lab, back down the stairs. The facility was in chaos. Alarms blaring, people running, and from outside, the sounds of battle. Lieutenant Da-hyun called Ta-jin over the comm. "Where are you?" "Main entrance, sir," came the reply. "Heavy fighting here. These creatures, they're not like the others. They're stronger, smarter. Fall back to the extraction point. We're on our way." They fought their way through the facility. The guards who had once protected it now fought alongside them against the new invaders. The black-scaled creatures moved with terrible speed and strength, tearing through defenses like paper. Finally, they reached the main entrance. Lieutenant Da-hyun and his men were holding a defensive position, but 3 of the 5 soldiers were down. The lieutenant himself was wounded, blood seeping through his suit at the shoulder. "Captain," he gasped, "they just keep coming." Ta-jin looked outside. The courtyard was filled with the creatures. Beyond them, their ships waited, engines glowing. "We can't go that way," said Sumai. "Back to the water pipe," suggested Han-sung. Chao shook her head. "They'll have found it by now. There's another way. Through the specimen containment area. It has an emergency exit. Leads to a tunnel under the jungle." "That's our best option," said Ta-jin. "Lead the way." They moved back into the facility, helping the wounded soldiers. The corridors were eerily empty now. Everyone had either escaped or been killed. Cha led them to a heavy door marked with biohazard symbols. Through here, The specimens are probably loose by now. Be ready. The door opened to a large chamber filled with empty containment units, glass cylinders like the ones on Ceres but larger. All broken. Whatever had been inside was gone. "Where are they?" asked Han Sung. A sound from above made them look up. Clinging to the ceiling were humanoid shapes, skin pale blue, limbs too long, eyes glowing yellow, dozens of them. "Don't make any sudden moves," whispered Acha. "They respond to rapid movement. The exit is on the far side. If we move slowly." One of the wounded soldiers coughed. The sound echoed in the chamber. The creatures' heads turned in unison. "Run!" shouted Tajin. They sprinted across the chamber as the creatures dropped from the ceiling. Fast, but not as fast as the black-scaled invaders. Tajin fired as he ran, dropping two of the creatures. Su Mi and Han Sung covered their flanks. They reached the exit, a small door on the far wall. Acha punched in a code, and it opened to reveal a narrow tunnel. "Go," ordered Tajin. "I'll hold them off." The others entered the tunnel. Tajin fired his weapon on its highest setting, causing part of the ceiling to collapse. It wouldn't stop the creatures for long, but it would slow them down. He ducked into the tunnel, sealing the door behind him. The tunnel was dark and narrow, angling upward. They moved as quickly as they could, carrying the wounded. After what seemed like hours, they saw light ahead. The tunnel ended in a small cave, hidden by vines. Outside, the jungle waited, dark and alive with sounds. "The dropship," said Tajin. "Can we reach it?" "It's 5 kilometers that way," said Acha, pointing. "Through the densest part of the jungle." Tajin touched his comm. "Hyunwoo, do you read me? We need extraction." Static, then a voice. *Vengeance* here. "We read you, Captain. The *Retribution* is under heavy attack. Captain Young-Soo reports multiple hull breaches, unknown hostiles attempting to board. We need pickup. Sending coordinates now." "On our way, Captain." ETA 10 minutes. They moved into the jungle, away from the facility. Behind them, explosions lit up the night sky. The battle continued, but Tajin knew it was already lost. Whatever had attacked the facility had come prepared. "Sir," said Lieutenant Da-hyun, his voice weak. "What were those things?" "Not the hybrids. The black ones." "I don't know," said Tajin. "But I think we just got our first look at the enemy Du Young and Ji-hoon were preparing for. The Void." "But they said we had 15 years, said Su-mi. "Maybe these are just scouts," suggested Han Sung, "testing our defenses. Or maybe the traitors were wrong," said Tajin. "Either way, we need to reach Europa. Find this director. Get answers." The jungle seemed to close in around them. Somewhere in the darkness, creatures moved. Whether the escaped specimens or the black-scaled invaders, Tajin couldn't tell. But he knew one thing for certain. The war they thought was over had only been the beginning. A new enemy had arrived, and humanity wasn't ready. The *Vengeance* appeared overhead, hovering above the trees. A rope ladder descended through a gap in the canopy. "Go," said Tajin. "I'll cover you." One by one, they climbed to safety. As Tajin prepared to follow, Acha touched his arm. "I'm staying," she said. "My home is here, and someone needs to warn the others who live in the jungle." "It's not safe," said Tajin. "Nowhere is safe now." She looked toward the burning facility. "Find your director. Stop these things, or there won't be any home left for any of us." Tajin nodded. He climbed the ladder into the *Vengeance*. From above, he could see the full scale of the attack. The facility was in flames. The invaders' ships surrounded it, dark shapes against the fire. And in orbit, the battle continued. The *Retribution* fought against 3 larger vessels, its weapons flashing in the darkness of space. "Get us up there," ordered Tajin. We need to help the asterisk retribution asterisk. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it was too late. The battlecruiser was badly damaged, fires visible along its hull. As they watched, one of the enemy ships fired a concentrated beam of energy. It cut through the asterisk retribution asterisk's midsection, splitting the ship in two. "No," whispered Sumai. The asterisk retribution asterisk exploded in a ball of light. The enemy ships turned, as if looking for new prey. "Get us out of here," said Tajin. "Maximum speed. Set course for Europa." As the asterisk vengeance asterisk accelerated away from Santos Prime, Tajin watched the burning planet recede. First Ceres, now Xantos. The enemy was moving faster than anyone had predicted. And somewhere on Europa, the mysterious director was waiting. With answers, with a plan, with the truth. The hunt had changed. Now they were being hunted too. Europa gleamed like a pearl against the darkness of space. Its ice surface reflected the distant sun, crisscrossed with brown cracks. Jupiter loomed behind it, massive and striped with storms. The asterisk vengeance asterisk approached cautiously, its stealth systems active. The ship had been running silent for 3 days, limping through space after the battle at Santos Prime. Repairs were still underway. The crew was tired, afraid. On the bridge, Tajin studied the moon's surface on the view screen. Somewhere below that ice was the director, the mastermind behind the traitors, the person who knew the truth about the void. "Any sign of defenses?" he asked. Jinha checked her console. "Nothing obvious, Captain. No satellites, no patrol ships. But there's an unusual energy signature near the southern pole. It could be a hidden base. Or a trap," said Hansung. He had barely slept since Santos. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Either way, it's our only lead," said Tajin. "Take us in, low orbit. I want detailed scans of that energy signature." The asterisk vengeance asterisk moved closer to Europa. The view screen showed the moon's frozen surface in greater detail. Mountains of ice, vast plains of white, and at the southern pole, a faint glow beneath the surface. "That's it," said Sumai. "Something big down there, at least 5 kilometers across, deep under the ice." "Any way in?" asked Tajin. "There's a small structure on the surface. Looks like an access point. Minimal heat signature." Tajin nodded. "Prepare a landing team. Me, Su-mi, Hansung, and Hyunwoo. We'll take a shuttle down." "Captain," said Jinha, "I'm detecting movement. Ships emerging from behind Jupiter's moon Callisto." The view screen shifted. 3 vessels appeared, moving fast. Their design was familiar. "Earth ships," said Tajin. "Battle cruisers. Asterisk Valiant asterisk, asterisk Defender asterisk, and asterisk Justice asterisk." "They're hailing us," said Jinha. "Put them through." The screen changed to show a stern-faced woman in an admiral's uniform. Gray hair cut short, cold eyes. "Admiral Min-hee, commander of Earth's home fleet." "Captain Tajin," she said. "Stand down and prepare to be boarded." Tajin frowned. "Admiral, what's the meaning of this?" "You are to abandon your mission immediately. The asterisk vengeance asterisk will be escorted back to Earth." "With respect, Admiral, we've discovered a threat to humanity. The traitors we've been hunting are working for someone called the Director. They're preparing for an invasion." "I am aware of your discoveries, Captain," interrupted Min-hee. "That information is now classified. Your mission is over." Tajin looked at his crew. Their faces showed the same confusion he felt. "Admiral, we've lost good people finding this information. We can't turn back now." Min-hee's expression hardened. "This is not a request, Captain. It is an order. Stand down." The communication ended. The screen returned to showing the approaching battlecruisers. "They're moving to surround us," reported Jinha. "Weapons powered but not locked." "What do we do, Captain?" asked Sumai. Ta Jin stared at the ships. Something wasn't right. Admiral Min he had dismissed the threat too easily, as if she already knew. The director, he said slowly. He has influence in the fleet. This is a cover-up. So what's our move? Asked Han Sung. Ta Jin straightened. We complete our mission. Jin Ha, Emergency Protocol 7. Su Mi, Han Sung, with me to the shuttle bay. Hyun Woo, prepare for immediate departure. They moved quickly. The emergency protocol would create sensor ghosts, multiple false readings of the * vengeance *. It wouldn't fool the battle cruisers for long, but it might give them enough time. The shuttle was small and fast, designed for stealth rather than comfort. They boarded quickly. Hyun-woo took the pilot's seat, his hands moving over the controls. Launch sequence initiated, he reported. Bay doors opening. *vengeance * shuttle, came Jin Ha's voice over the comm. The battle cruisers are launching fighters. You have maybe 5 minutes before they realize the deception. Understood, said Ta Jin. Keep them busy as long as you can, then retreat to the rendezvous point. Yes, Captain. Good hunting. The shuttle launched, accelerating away from the * vengeance * toward Europa's surface. Through the viewport, Ta Jin saw the battle cruisers focusing on his ship, not noticing the small craft slipping past them. We're clear, said Hyun-woo. Entering Europa's thin atmosphere now. Surface landing in 3 minutes. The shuttle descended toward the ice moon. Wind buffeted the small craft. Ice crystals formed on the viewport. The surface rushed up to meet them, a barren landscape of white and pale blue. They landed near the access point Su Mi had detected. It was a small dome, barely visible against the ice. No markings, no signs of life. Suits on, ordered Ta Jin. Environment is hard vacuum. Temperature -200 degrees. They put on their environmental suits and checked each other's seals. The suits would keep them alive for 6 hours in Europa's hostile conditions. After that, they'd freeze or suffocate. Weapons check, said Ta Jin. Each of them carried energy pistols and 1 larger rifle. Remember, we want the director alive if possible. We need answers. They exited the shuttle onto Europa's surface. The ice crunched beneath their boots. Jupiter filled half the sky, its great red spot staring down like an eye. This way, said Su Mi, following her scanner. 50 meters to the access point. They walked carefully across the ice. Gravity was low, making each step lighter than on Earth, but requiring careful balance. The dome grew larger as they approached. It was made of dark metal with a single door. No obvious security, said Han Sung, studying the entrance. That seems wrong. Maybe they're not expecting visitors, suggested Hyun-woo. This place is supposed to be secret. Su Mi examined the door. Simple airlock system. No complex locks. Too easy, muttered Ta Jin. Stay alert. This feels like a trap. The airlock opened without resistance. They stepped inside, the door sealing behind them. Air hissed as the chamber pressurized. Lights came on automatically, illuminating the small space. Atmosphere normal, reported Hyun-woo, checking his scanner. We can remove our helmets. The inner door opened, revealing a corridor that sloped downward. The walls were metal, undecorated. Lights flickered on ahead of them as they walked, turning off behind them. The corridor seemed to go on forever, spiraling down into the moon. How deep does this go? Asked Han Sung after they had walked for nearly 20 minutes. We're 2 kilometers below the surface, said Su Mi. But the energy signature is still below us. Finally, the corridor ended at a large door. Unlike the utilitarian design of the facility so far, this door was ornate. Made of what looked like real wood, with intricate carvings, a symbol was etched into the center. The same spiral with 3 intersecting lines that Hyun-woo had found in the Krell communications. What now? Asked Hyun-woo. Before anyone could answer, The door swung open on silent hinges. A warm light spilled out. A voice called from inside. "Please come in. I've been expecting you." Ta Jin raised his weapon, signaling the others to stay behind him. He stepped through the doorway into a large, circular room. It was like nothing he had expected. Not a military command center or a lab, but something like a library. Bookshelves lined the walls. A large desk stood in the center, covered with papers and old-fashioned books, and behind the desk, a man. He was older, with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His uniform bore the insignia of an Earth Fleet general, but with subtle modifications. His eyes were sharp, intelligent. He smiled as Ta Jin entered. "Captain Ta Jin," he said, "the hero of Proxima. Welcome to Europa Base. I am General Sung Min, or as you've come to know me, the director." Ta Jin kept his weapon raised. General Sung Min died in the Battle of Mars 5 years ago. The man's smile didn't waver. "A necessary deception. Please, lower your weapon. If I wanted you dead, you would never have reached this room." Ta Jin didn't move. "I have questions." "Of course you do. That's why you're here." Sung Min gestured to chairs arranged before his desk. "Please sit. Your companions too. We have much to discuss, and not much time." Slowly, Ta Jin lowered his weapon. He nodded to the others, who entered the room cautiously. None of them sat. "You're behind it all," said Ta Jin. "The traitors, the hybrids, the experiments." "Yes," replied Sung Min simply. "Though traitor is a matter of perspective. I prefer to think of us as humanity's last hope." "You betrayed Earth to the Krell," said Su Mai. "Millions died in that war. And billions will die in the war to come if we are not prepared." Sung Min's voice hardened. "The void is real, Captain. More real than you can imagine. I've seen what they can do. What they will do when they arrive in force." "The advanced scouts," said Ta Jin. "At Santos Prime." "Yes. Earlier than expected. Our timeline has accelerated." Sung Min stood and moved to a large screen on the wall. He touched a control, and the screen lit up with images. Star systems, planets, all in ruins. "These are recordings from Krell deep space probes. Worlds the void has already consumed." The images were horrifying. Planets cracked open like eggs, stars dimmed to embers. Space itself seemed warped and wrong around the affected areas. "How do you have access to Krell data?" asked Hyunwoo. "Because I made a deal with them," said Sung Min. 15 years ago, their scout ships reached our system. They came in peace, not to conquer, but to warn. They had encountered the void 2 centuries earlier in their home galaxy. They had fought and lost. So they fled, searching for allies. "And you believed them?" asked Han Sung. "Not at first, but they provided evidence. Irrefutable evidence." Sung Min touched another control. The screen showed a small object, black and twisted, unlike any material Ta Jin had seen. A fragment of void technology. "It defies our understanding of physics. The Krell gave it to me as proof." "So you started working with them," said Ta Jin. "In secret. I had to. If I had gone public, there would have been panic. Politicians would have debated while the threat grew closer. We needed action. Preparation." Sung Min's eyes were intense. "The Krell proposed a test, a controlled war between our species, to push humanity to develop new weapons, new strategies, to prepare us." "Controlled." Su Mi's voice shook with anger. "Millions died, and billions will live because of those sacrifices," countered Sung Min. "The war forced humanity to advance more in 7 years than we would have in 50. We developed weapons that can hurt the void, strategies that might save us." "And the hybrids?" asked Ta Jin. "The experiments. The next phase. Krell strength combined with human adaptability, and enhanced with void genetic material to better resist their influence." Sung Min looked troubled. "Du Young's work on Ceres, Ji Hoon's on Santos. all part of creating an army that can fight the void on their own terms. You played God, said Han Sung. Created monsters. I did what was necessary, said Sung Min firmly. What no one else was willing to do. Ta Jin studied the man before him. There was no madness in those eyes. No fanaticism. Only cold determination. The worst part was that Ta Jin could almost understand the logic. If the threat was real, prove it, he said. Prove the void is coming. Sung Min nodded. Follow me. He led them through a door at the back of the library into a larger chamber. This room was different. High-tech equipment lined the walls. In the center was a massive holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots pulsed at its edge. The Void Fleet, explained Sung Min. Each dot is a vessel larger than anything humanity has ever built. They're coming. And after what happened at Santos, they know we're preparing. How long? Asked Ta Jin. Based on their current acceleration, 3 months. Not 15 years as we originally thought. Their scouts have already established beachheads in our galaxy. The attack on Santos was just the beginning. Ta Jin felt cold despite the room's comfortable temperature. 3 months. Not enough time to prepare Earth. Not enough time to build defenses. What's your plan? He asked. Sung Min touched the display. It changed to show Europa and the space around it. Hidden beneath the ice were massive shipyards. Hundreds of vessels under construction. And they weren't conventional ships. They were hybrids themselves, partly organic, partly mechanical. The void can disable our technology, explained Sung Min. But these ships are different, partly alive, resistant to their influence. We've been building them for years, in secret. How many? Asked Su Mei. 500 ready now. Another 1,000 nearly complete. Not enough, said Han Sung. No, agreed Sung Min. Not nearly enough. That's why I need your help, Captain Ta Jin. My help? Ta Jin was surprised. For what? To unite humanity. The government knows about the threat now. That's why Admiral Min he tried to stop you. But they're afraid, planning evacuations for the elite while leaving the rest to die. Sung Min's voice was bitter. I need someone the people trust. The hero of Proxima. To tell them the truth. To rally Earth for the real war. Ta Jin looked at his companions. Han Sung's face was grim. Su Mi looked uncertain. Hyun Woo's simply afraid. And if I refuse? Asked Ta Jin. Then you leave here, return to Earth, and watch billions die when the void arrives. Sung Min's voice was calm. I'm not going to force you, Captain. This must be your choice. A communication panel on the wall chimed. Sung Min touched it. Yes. Director, came a voice, tight with urgency. We're detecting multiple ships entering the Jupiter system. Not Earth vessels. The energy signatures match what we recorded at Santos. Sung Min's face paled. How many? 50 and counting, sir. They'll reach Europa in 30 minutes. The room was silent for a moment. Then Sung Min turned to Ta Jin. It seems our time for discussion is over, Captain. The void has found us. Alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Red lights flashed. Ta Jin could hear distant sounds of movement as people rushed to battle stations. How did they find us? Asked Hyun Woo. The battle cruisers, realized Ta Jin. Admiral Min Hee. They led them here. Possibly, agreed Sung Min. Or they followed your ship. It doesn't matter now. He moved to another console and pressed a series of commands. I'm activating the fleet. All ships that can fly will fly. To do what? Asked Han Sung. You said yourself, we don't have enough ships. To buy time, said Sung Min. For evacuations, for Earth to prepare. He looked at Ta Jin. And for you to make your decision, Captain. Ta Jin thought of everything he had seen. The hybrid creatures, the ruined worlds on the screen, the desperation in Sung Min's eyes. Was it possible the man was telling the truth? That everything, the betrayal, the experiments, the war, had been necessary. I need proof, said Ta Jin. Not images that could be faked. Not stories. Real proof of this threat. Sung Min nodded slowly. Come with me. One last thing to show you. He led them deeper into the facility, down more corridors, into areas that felt older. The walls here were rougher, the air cooler. Finally, they reached a massive door of black metal. It radiated cold. This is where it began, said Sung Min, where I first saw the truth. The door opened to reveal a chamber carved from Europa's ice. In the center, suspended in a containment field, was a small spacecraft. Not human, not Krell. It was black and twisted, like the fragment Sung Min had shown them, but larger. Its surface seemed to absorb light. A void scout ship, said Sung Min. It crashed on Europa 18 years ago, before the Krell arrived. This is what convinced me the threat was real. Ta Jin approached the ship carefully. The closer he got, the more wrong it felt. His skin crawled. His thoughts became jumbled. Something about the ship affected the mind. Be careful, warned Sung Min. Prolonged exposure causes effects, hallucinations, personality changes. Is it alive? Asked Hyunwoo, keeping his distance. In a way, their technology is partly biological, like the hybrids we've created, but far more advanced. Sung Min pointed to a section of the ship that had been cut open. Inside was a twisted mass of black material, halfway between machine and flesh. This is what we're fighting, Captain. An enemy that doesn't think like us, doesn't feel like us, doesn't value life as we understand it. Ta Jin stepped back from the ship. The wrongness of it had convinced him more than any words could have. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't from any world he knew. Sir, came an urgent voice over the facility's communication system. The void ships have accelerated. New ETA 15 minutes. Earth fleet is engaging, but taking heavy losses. Prepare all available ships for launch, ordered Sung Min. He turned to Ta Jin. Your decision, Captain. Help us fight, or leave while you still can. Ta Jin looked at his companions. They had followed him across the galaxy. Trusted him. Now they waited for his choice. If we fight, he said, we do it my way. No more secrets. No more experiments on unwilling subjects. We tell humanity the truth and let them decide how to prepare. Sung Min hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. Transparency from now on. Then we fight, said Ta Jin. Not for you. Not for your methods. But for Earth. For everyone who doesn't deserve to die when these things arrive. Alarms blared louder. The facility shook as distant explosions reached them. The battle had begun in orbit. We need to get to the command center, said Sung Min. Coordinate the fleet. They ran through the facility, which was now in full battle mode. Crew members rushed to stations. Soldiers prepared defenses. The fear was palpable. The command center was a large room with view screens covering the walls. They showed the space around Europa. Dozens of black ships, moving with impossible grace, attacking everything in their path. Earth battlecruisers fought back. Their weapons seemed to pass through the void ships without effect. And rising from hidden bays in Europa's ice were Sung Min's secret fleet, the hybrid ships. They moved differently than conventional vessels, more like living things than machines. They engaged the void ships, their strange weapons actually causing damage. It's working, said Sung Min, watching the battle. The hybrid ships are effective. But there weren't enough of them. For every void ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. The Earth fleet was being decimated. Admiral Min He's flagship, the Valiant Asterisk, exploded in a ball of fire. We can't win this, said Han Sung. No, agreed Sung Min. Not today. But we can survive. Learn. Prepare for the next battle. He turned to a communications officer. Send the order. All ships protect the evacuation vessels. Priority is getting the knowledge we have back to Earth. Ta Jin watched the battle. Despite everything he had learned about Sung Min, about the Traitors, He couldn't deny they had been right about one thing. The void was real, and it was here. "What now?" he asked. "Now," said Sung Min. "We run. Fight when we can. Hide when we must. Prepare Earth for what's coming." He looked at Ta Jin. "And you tell your story. Make them believe before it's too late." Another explosion rocked the facility. The lights flickered. "Breach in Sector 7, reported a technician. "They've landed troops." "Time to go," said Sung Min. "The evacuation ships are in Hangar 3. Take your team there, Captain. Get back to Earth. Warn them." "What about you?" asked Ta Jin. Sung Min's smile was sad. "Someone has to stay behind. Cover the retreat." He straightened, once more the general he had been. "It has been an honor, Captain Ta Jin. Make sure our sacrifices were not in vain." Ta Jin saluted, despite everything. Sung Min had done terrible things, but with purpose, with conviction, for the survival of humanity. They left the command center as the first sounds of combat reached them. The Void forces had entered the facility. Their strange, chittering calls echoed through the corridors. The way to Hangar 3 was chaotic. Crew members running, soldiers taking defensive positions. Twice they had to detour around collapsed sections of corridor. Finally, they reached the hangar. It was filled with small, fast ships designed for escape. Most were already gone. Only 3 remained. "There," shouted Su Mei, pointing to the nearest ship. They ran across the hangar floor. Behind them, the doors burst open. Black-scaled creatures poured in, moving with terrifying speed. "Get to the ship," ordered Ta Jin. "I'll hold them off." He turned, firing his weapon at the approaching creatures. They fell, but more kept coming. Su Mi and Hyunwoo reached the ship, the ramp lowering to receive them. Han Sung stopped halfway, turning back to help Ta Jin. "Go," shouted Ta Jin. "That's an order." Han Sung hesitated, then ran for the ship. Ta Jin continued firing, backing toward the ramp. The creatures were almost on him. He could see their red eyes, their twisted limbs, their hunger. He made it to the ramp just as they reached him. One leaped, its claws extended. Ta Jin fired, catching it in midair. He fell backward onto the ramp, which began to close. The ship's engines roared to life. It lifted off as the ramp sealed, leaving the creatures howling in the hangar below. Through a viewport, Ta Jin watched Europa fall away. The battle in space continued. The hybrid ships fought valiantly, but were outnumbered. "Course set for Earth," reported Su Mei from the pilot's seat. "Maximum speed." Ta Jin nodded. His mind was already racing ahead. To Earth. To the warnings they would give. To the preparations they would make. To the war that was just beginning. The hunt for traitors had led them to a greater truth, a greater threat, and now a greater purpose. Not revenge, not justice, survival. "The war was just the beginning," he said softly. "Now we hunt for hope."